I didn't plan on sharing this concerning you, but I felt compelled to. I kept this bottled up for quite some time, and truthfully, it was weighing heavily on my spirit. I delayed addressing it longer than I should have, because a part of me recognized that once spoken aloud, there would be no turning back. I worried that sharing this reality might cause you to view me differently, or worse, cause you to confront yourself differently and realize you've been running from the exact same fears. Yet I eventually understood that suppressing it caused far more harm than releasing it. This truth needed to surface because you have been carrying a burden that was never meant to rest on your shoulders alone. Furthermore, it is long past due for someone to tell you this directly, rather than allowing you to keep pretending you are unaware. You need to receive this message today, not next week, not when you feel prepared, not when the circumstances seem ideal, but right now. The reality is that you have been waiting for an elusive moment to materialize entirely on its own. And I believe deep down you already grasp precisely what I mean. Therefore, let me explain why I could no longer keep this to myself. Last night, I experienced a vivid dream, and I need you to stay with me because it holds genuine significance. It was far from random. Within the dream, everything was in continuous motion, consecutive scenes of movement, descending in an elevator, ascending an escalator, riding a bicycle downhill, rapids rushing over river rocks, the ocean tide pulling back and forth like a breathing entity. Everything stayed in ceaseless motion, as though the entire dream refused to stand still. Then, unexpectedly, a mysterious figure appeared. It looked sharp, almost translucent like frost-given form, and frankly, it terrified me to my core. Every instinct urged me to flee, but instead I marched straight up to it, gripped its arm, and demanded, "No, tell me right now what this is and what you are trying to reveal to me." It gazed at me with a raspy, weathered voice and uttered a single word, "Time." That was all. That was the entire message. I woke up with my heart racing because I instantly knew this was not solely about me. It was a message meant to be delivered directly to you. So, here we find ourselves, and the foundational truth you must absorb is this. There exists a stark contrast between the natural rhythm your life runs on and the artificial timeline you have forced yourself to follow. Only one of those is authentic. The other is a construct you invented to maintain a sense of order. Somewhere along the journey we completely forgot that we made it up. Clocks are human inventions. Deadlines and countdowns dictating where you should supposedly be by now. All of those originated externally. Conversely, the tides, the changing seasons, and the organic cycles of growth and rest are not man-made. That is the genuine cadence you were designed to move with. And I suspect you have been so fixated on watching the clock that you forgot you are permitted to follow the cycles instead. Here is what I sense regarding your current state, and let me know if this resonates. You feel left behind. You feel as though everyone around you is advancing at an unattainable velocity. It feels like an invisible timer is ticking louder each day, exclusively for you. Consequently, you cannot catch your breath because you constantly strive to bridge the gap between your current position and where you believe you ought to be. Some of you feel entirely paralyzed and stagnant, standing still while the rest of the world rushes past. Conversely, others feel the exact opposite, spinning out of control merely to maintain your position, having forgotten what it feels like simply to exist without an underlying countdown. Either way, it is deeply exhausting. It is profoundly draining, and it is high time someone reassured you that this exhaustion does not mean you are failing at life. It simply indicates you have been navigated by the wrong clock. Now comes the portion that may sting slightly. Yet please stay with me, because this is the exact insight you require. I believe you have been setting yourself up for disappointment, not out of cruelty or carelessness, but because you have constructed an idealized version of yourself far off in the distance. This version finally possesses peace, love, security, and absolute comfort in their own skin. Yet you have placed that version so distantly that it feels completely disconnected from the reality of who you are today. You speak of this future self as though they were a stranger you hope to encounter eventually. Here is the truth, poised to shift your entire perspective. That individual is not ahead of you. They are not waiting somewhere down the road. They already reside inside you at this very moment, because you could not possibly visualize, feel, or ache for them if a part of you were not already carrying them. You cannot conceptualize a future that you do not already hold the seed of. Therefore, stop treating your personal evolution like a stranger's journey. It is time you acknowledged it as your own. Furthermore, I want to address the primary driver beneath all of this. You continually tell yourself you desire the career, the partnership, the home, the physical transformation, or the healing. However, it was never truly about the physical milestone. It is about the emotional state that milestone represents. You do not actually crave the promotion. You simply want to feel that your labor carries meaning. You do not fundamentally need the relationship for its own sake. You desire to feel chosen, secure, and witnessed. You do not inherently want money. You want the capacity to finally exhale. And here is the crucial realization that needed to emerge. Right now, you can access that emotional state prior to the arrival of external proof. You have convinced yourself that you must wait for validation before granting yourself permission to feel peaceful, worthy, or secure. Yet peace was never contingent upon proof. It has always been accessible to you within this body and moment, regardless of whether external evidence has caught up. Yet I feel compelled to approach a more tender subject, as this message remains incomplete without it. Something fractured within you some time ago. Perhaps it was a relationship. Perhaps it was an earlier version of yourself that you preferred. Perhaps it was trust. Perhaps it was innocence. Perhaps it was a foundational dream for your life that unraveled piece by piece before you ever had the chance to grieve it properly. I believe that unaddressed grief explains why the future feels so distant now, because the person who existed prior to that loss could never have imagined the strength required simply to survive it. That past version lacked the necessary tools. They could not foresee this far ahead. That precisely explains why the ordeal felt so brutal when it occurred. You were being asked to morph into someone you had not yet grown into. Yet the dynamic has shifted. You are no longer that individual. You have already navigated the survival phase. You have already accomplished the transformation. Consequently, if you allow yourself to envision your capabilities moving forward, you can bypass much of the previous turmoil because you are no longer advancing blindly. You carry scars, and those scars carry vital wisdom. Speaking of those scars, I need to voice something directly to you that you likely haven't heard in a long time. You have been fighting a prolonged battle. far longer than anyone around you recognizes. Externally, you likely project composure. You probably appear as the reliable pillar, the dependable confidant who never appears ruffled. Observers might even envy your apparent serenity, yet underneath you harbor an exhaustion that never registers in photographs. You carry untreated wounds, having long ago learned to press forward regardless. You kept moving simply because stopping never felt like a viable alternative. Therefore, here is your explicit permission slip. Rest is not the antithesis of ambition. Rest is not synonymous with falling behind. True rest is restorative. It transcends taking a nap or avoiding chores. It involves liberating your mind from the tyranny of deadlines. It means laying down obsolete timelines and abandoning the habit of measuring your value by how rapidly you advance. Man-made time was engineered to foster a persistent sense of inadequacy. That is not a personal flaw. It is simply the intended design of the system you evaluate yourself against. Your struggle is not evidence of failure. It is a testament to growth. And I need you to absorb that truth clearly. Now let's speak about the stranger, because this is where the narrative shifts. I sense that someone new, or someone returning from your past, is about to re-enter your life, initially bringing an unfamiliar or slightly unsettling energy. It could be a familiar face resurfacing in a manner that defies your recollection of them. Alternatively, it could be a complete newcomer who resists all your usual categorization habits. I want you to observe your approach toward meeting new individuals lately, as it has shifted more than you realize. In your youth, encountering someone new was met with pure curiosity. You pondered their story. You wondered about their passions and joys without instantly attempting to diagnose, predict, or pigeonhole them within the first 30 seconds. Somewhere along the path, that practice ceased. Presently, meeting someone triggers immediate internal comparisons. You think, this individual resembles the person who hurt me, or this mirrors a past failure. Consequently, people cease to be human beings in your eyes, and instead transform into warnings, mirrors, or echoes of old trauma. I am not advising you to abandon your discernment. If an interaction triggers alarm bells, honor that instinct unconditionally. However, an opportunity exists to approach others with wonder instead of suspicion. Someone is approaching, or is already present, who demands your curiosity rather than your caution. Yet here lies the twist that fundamentally altered my perspective last night. The stranger does not exist solely in the external world. The stranger also resides within you. That translucent figure from my dream, the entity I had to approach instead of flee from, was never an external person. It represented a fragment of my own identity that I had banished so deeply into the shadows that it became unrecognizable. I suspect a similar fragment exists within you. A part of you was buried long ago because it felt overly intense, overwhelming, or inconvenient to those around you. Perhaps it is your ambition. Perhaps it is your expressive voice. Perhaps it is your appetite for a grander existence than the one you settled into. Whatever it may be, it has lingered in the dark, waiting for you to conquer your fear of it, ready to ask, what do you truly desire from me? What message are you trying to convey? It is high time you confronted that aspect of yourself. It is long past time you stopped treating your greatest strength as a threat, and the origin of that burial pattern makes complete sense when examined closely. You likely retain a memory of unbridled enthusiasm, possessing an innovative idea or spark, and bringing it openly into a room, only to have an authority figure extinguish it. Perhaps it occurred in a classroom, perhaps around a family dinner table, perhaps within a professional setting. You introduced a brilliant, original perspective that no one else had considered. Instead of encountering curiosity, you met a dismissive decree stating, "That is not how things operate," or "You lack sufficient experience," accompanied by a silencing quietness that commanded you to shrink. And so, you complied. You mastered the art of withholding your best concepts, subjecting them to a rigorous internal filter to determine whether they would survive scrutiny before uttering them aloud. You became fluent in shrinking yourself. Yet I need you to recognize that shrinking was never a sign of weakness. It was an act of intelligence. Your mind cleverly protected you from repeated injury, but the specific dangers that necessitated that defense no longer occupy this room. You hold the authority to update your internal programming, because the loudest message echoing through this entire insight is clear. You are ill-suited for arbitrary deadlines. Deadlines were never your native rhythm. What you genuinely require is a lifeline. You need something that pulls you back toward your authentic self, rather than driving you toward a finish line sketched by someone else. Therefore, here is my recommended exercise. Literally take whatever environment witnessed that dismissal, the classroom, the dinner table, the meeting, and rewrite the scenario mentally. Envision walking back into that exact moment, except this time, when that external voice attempts to diminish you, you refuse to shrink. You look them in the eye and state calmly and unapologetically, "You simply do not grasp this. You are operating on a completely different level." Then you walk away, not out of malice but in profound peace, having finally silenced the ticking clock instead of letting it silence you. That exact mindset serves as the gateway to your immediate future. An epiphany awaits you. An undeniable wave of clarity is approaching, where a persistent puzzle will seamlessly click into place. You will perceive a situation with a profound insight that startles even yourself. Subsequently, you will step into whatever environment demands it, be it a relationship, workplace, or family dynamic, equipped with something no one else possesses. You will carry the wisdom of someone who descended into their own shadow, confronted the unknown, and emerged with insider knowledge inaccessible to the rest. You are no longer governed by deadlines. You are anchored by a lifeline, your personal lifeline, meant exclusively for you to follow. Naturally, this realization necessitates a choice. Several of you currently inhabit circumstances that your intuition tells you have expired. Perhaps it is a stagnant partnership. Perhaps it is a career that drains you far more than it fulfills. Perhaps it is a persona you maintain for the benefit of others. The dependable one, the accommodating one who ensures everyone else's comfort at your own expense. While it may currently feel like a frantic now-or-never emergency with a closing window, I urge you to decelerate, broaden your perspective, grant yourself the grace of divine timing rather than adhering to artificial deadlines. This decision does not demand a rushed exit. Rather, it requires radical honesty regarding what you are prepared to leave behind. For many of you, what needs to be abandoned is an antiquated, painful narrative. Not necessarily the people or the exact circumstances, but the disempowering story you constructed about what those experiences signify about your worth. you possess full permission to walk away from the narrative where you played the role of the person who fell short. You are crossing the threshold into a new chapter that requires no luggage dragged over from the past. The overarching takeaway from this entire reflection is remarkably simple. Despite the winding journey required for me to comprehend it myself, you possess vastly more intelligence than you give yourself credit for. This extends beyond conventional intellectual measurements. It encompasses your capacity to navigate your internal shadows and sit alongside the facets of yourself that intimidate you, rather than fleeing from them. Ultimately, this eccentric message boils down to a single revelation. You hold the power to redefine time. You can cease evaluating your worth based on external countdowns. You can recognize the immense pressure you've shouldered from external or internalized authority figures who taught you to make your existence smaller, quieter, and more palatable. Let me pose a question, and I challenge you to sit with it rather than rushing past it as usual. Have you noticed how rigid your self-definition has become? How you've constructed invisible boundaries, categorizing what is safe versus risky, what aligns with your identity versus what doesn't, until your entire life is confined within an unchosen box. Judgment, apprehension, the compulsion to be perpetually correct, and the pressure to have everything figured out serve as barriers between your current self and your next evolution. We are all products of our past, which is merely part of the human condition. However, you were never intended to remain permanently confined within the molds cast by past conditioning. Even your grandest current aspirations are likely too modest for your actual potential, because they were calculated using obsolete rules. Stop withholding your blossoming until ideal conditions materialize. Lotus flowers do not thrive solely in pristine environments. They require mud to bloom. Your truths, your hardships, and your difficult seasons provide the exact soil required for your growth. Without confronting those messy realities, your most authentic self can never surface. Growth relies on utilizing the dirt as fuel for your evolution, rather than ignoring it. You cannot progress toward anything new while fiercely protecting the rigid boundaries of who you currently believe you are. Clinging too tightly to a static identity forces you to serve that identity rather than your actual life. It begins dictating your reality, screening out any experience that contradicts your pre-painted self-portrait. The true cost of remaining small is not external punishment, but the gradual blindness to your own expansive potential. Therefore, here lies the invitation. Imagine gazing into a mirror and allowing your reflection to soften, rather than anchoring strictly to who you are today. Let the boundaries blur. Ask yourself honestly who else you might become, and what truths would emerge if you abandoned the identity you've defended for years. That undefined, malleable space, though uncertain and mildly intimidating, is precisely where boundless possibility re-emerges. Be entirely honest with yourself. None of this demands that you possess everything figured out immediately. 0 additional requirements are placed upon you right now, save for a single prerequisite. You must exhibit the willingness to loosen your grip on your preconceived identity, just enough to permit transformation. That future self you've envisioned on the horizon, the one embodying the peace, security, love, and clarity you've pursued, does not require a calendar date to materialize. They already reside within you in seed form at this exact second as you process these words. You act as an active participant in your own unfolding. Starting today, you dictate whether you remain bound to the obsolete clock or finally synchronize with the cadence of your own evolution. Can we embrace absolute authenticity for a moment? Soul-to-soul honesty. I recognize I have worn a mask, and I am finished doing so, just as I invite you to shed yours. If stagnation weighs heavily upon you, remember that the lotus originates in the dark, underwater depths. Hardship is never the conclusion of the narrative. It serves as the foundation. Does that proposition resonate positively? Naturally, it may simultaneously provoke slight apprehension, which is entirely normal. True growth almost invariably triggers both emotions concurrently. Yet I desire for you to carry a single sentence away from this dialogue, as it catalyzed this entire sharing. It is high time, not because you lag behind, not because your opportunities are expiring, not because an invisible countdown closes in, but because you finally deserve permission to stop evaluating your existence against an external metric and start tuning into your own internal rhythm. The truth required expression, and now it has been voiced. You needed this message today, and now you possess it. Your subsequent actions remain entirely, autonomously, and definitively up to you. I required this reminder just as much as you did, and I deeply appreciate our shared space. Thank you for holding space while I articulated this. I acknowledge the emotional weight, but you are entirely worthy of such depth. We navigate this evolution conjointly, flourishing one day at a time. I cherish your presence through this exploration, and I look forward to connecting again soon.